at ESPN, some executive, maybe it was Mickey Mouse himself, that said, hey, let's start this game at 8 o'clock on a Thursday night. To whoever that person is, I hope you bang your toe on a coffee table today, because I don't think anybody enjoyed having to sit through a 4-hour game last night so late on a weekday. And for all of us here at the station that obviously have to do a lot of preparation for our shows the next day after the game is over, certainly not fun to be up that late watching that game last night. And to culminate with all that, South Carolina didn't even end up winning. So that obviously makes it all that much worse. And, there's a lot to unpack from this game. Also going to be talking to our guy, Jack Felcher from Gamecock Central, coming up here in a little over 10 minutes. But you got to start with the pitching. Roman Kimball, who had a rough outing last weekend, as everybody in the starting rotation did. We've talked about it all week, where your 3 starters combined for a total of 5 innings, and that was going to be unacceptable if you were going to beat this high-powered offense that Georgia brings to the table. And Roman Kimball last night only is able to get through a third of an inning before getting pulled. Gave up 2 hits, 4 runs, and only had 1 strikeout in that time out there on the mound. Had to bring in Ty Good, who, did as good as he could. Still was able to go 4 innings, so he gave you some length as you hope that Ty Good can. But nobody on the mound really had an answer for what Georgia was bringing until Zach Beach got up there in the 9th inning. But by that point in time, Georgia already had the 4-run lead, and it was going to be hard to to climb back up that hill and back into that game. But a rough night all around for pitching. Again, you knew that you were coming into facing a really good lineup in this Georgia team. Charlie Condon got his over the course of the night. We'll certainly get to that in just a moment. But you got to have more length out of your starters, and Roman Kimball specifically, because again, this is something that and he's not, obviously he came back from the injury to start the season, so we knew he was not going to be as fresh and efficient as maybe an Eli Jones or somebody like that. But when you look at what he's done for you in prior starts, I mean 2-3 innings, 4 innings, he's shown you the ability to get you a little bit more length, which is what you need, especially when you're playing this game that South Carolina plays every single weekend, of having no starter announced for Sunday, because it's all based on what you use through your bullpen of the first 2 games on who's available. Now we assume it's going to be Dylan Eskew. He did not make an appearance last night, and if he does not head out to the mound tonight, then he, of course, will be starting on Sunday once again. But you just got to get more length out of these starters. And again, tonight or this afternoon, however you want to phrase it, it's an earlier game today. You're going to get Eli Jones. He needs to go out there, give you, I'd say at minimum, 4 solid innings. Now Eli Jones, we know he gives up hits. That's his thing. He gives up hits. He allows guys to get on base, but he limits run production when he's doing his best job of pitching. You're going to need him to do that tonight. And then again, assuming SQ gets the start coming up tomorrow to wrap up the series, you're going to need some good length out of him, because you can't burn through all your pitchers, especially in these first 2 games, if you want to be able to put it together and ultimately win the series. And that's what sucked so much about last night, is now you're behind the 8 ball. And for South Carolina, you put up 10 runs. You had a good stream of offense yourself. It just came later in the game. Now South Carolina, they answered Georgia's onslaught in that first inning, where Georgia jumps out by 4 runs, and they answered with 3 runs of their own in the bottom of the 5th, or excuse me, the bottom of the 1st. But then you proceeded to produce just 1 run over the course of the next 4 innings, while Georgia themselves had 6. So you find yourself down 10-4, and it really, really looked like Georgia was potentially in a position to almost run rule South Carolina at one point in time. Thankfully, that did not happen. But you go to the 6th inning, and Charlie Condon comes up with the bases loaded, already up by 6 runs. And again, fortunately for South Carolina, he popped up into foul territory, and I think Petrie's the one that went up there and grabbed that one. But that prevented that game from being a run rule. And then South Carolina was able to come in and get some runs in the bottom of the bottom of the 6th there to keep them alive in the game, but just not able to mount that, come back 3 more runs in the bottom of the 8th inning to at least make it interesting going into that final inning. But then Georgia made quick work of South Carolina in the bottom of the ninth. 1, 2, 3. Jackson Messina and Noland all went down, and that was all she wrote for South Carolina in game number 1. You do got to give a shout out. Kennedy Jones had a great night once again, 4 or 5 for for 3 RBIs. Got a couple doubles in there. Parker Noland went 2 for 3 himself with an RBI, and Dalton Reeves 2 for 5 with 2 RBIs himself. So you had some guys at the bottom of your order that were producing pretty well. Blake Jackson drove in a couple runs, himself as well. But your key guys, the ones that we talk about the offense living and dying by what Ethan Petrie and Cole Messina do. Petrie did go 2 for 4 at the plate and also took a nasty ball basically off the brim of his helmet. Thought it about hit him in the face last night late in the game. And he ended up going 2 for 4, couldn't drive in any runs. And then Cole Messina ends up going 0 for 5 with 4 strikeouts. So again, even if one of those guys is not playing his best baseball, then the rest of the offense is not quite going to be where you need it to. And again, you still scored 10 runs, so you feel good about that to a degree against a Georgia pitching staff that has done a lot better job as of late compared to where they were, at the beginning of the season. But unfortunately, that offense is certainly high powered enough to score a lot of runs on their own. And that's exactly what Georgia was able to do last night. Ed Bird, who's producing back in the studio, I want to get to a couple Kingston cuts really quick. Of course, the one guy everybody was keeping an eye on going into last night's game was, of course, Charlie Condon. Let's go with cut number 16 here, Ed. This is Coach Kingston giving his assessment of what Charlie Condon did to South Carolina last night.
Well, I mean, he's the best hitter in the country right now, and he's seeing the ball really well. He sees the ball really well. He seems to be on a lot of different pitches. He was 2 for 4 tonight, so he was a little bit above what he normally does. He usually hits 470, so you can't walk him every time. He's a really good hitter, and we'll continue to pick our spots with him.
As we talked about going into the game last night, you knew Charlie Condon was going to get his. He was going to score runs. He was probably going to hit a home run, which he did last night, making it now 8 games in a row that he's hit a home run. You knew he was going to be productive. He's going to score a couple runs. That's going to happen. It was limiting the guys around him, making sure the rest of that lineup did not hurt you to hopefully keep South Carolina in this game. And unfortunately, that's not the case. Trey Phillips had a couple home runs, ended up driving in 5 RBIs. Corey Collins had a couple of RBIs himself. Bottom of the lineup, guys like Chadwick and Branch were able to drive in a couple runs too. Gonzalez, their catcher, also had 3 RBIs in his outing too. So South Carolina just was not able to keep this Georgia offense at bay last night, and again ended up playing from behind for the entire game. And unfortunately, when you go up against a high-powered offense like that, playing from behind is usually not going to bode too well for you. So South Carolina definitely going to need to jump on things early in the game tonight or later this afternoon. It's a 5:30 first pitch, and that goes back to what I said to start the show. Whoever thought that the 8 o'clock start last night for 2 teams that had the capability of scoring double-digit runs, that game was going to take forever. We all knew that, and as I guess. The way it would work out, today's game starting at 5:30 will probably be, a tight 2-hour pitchers battle that ends up 2-1 or something like that. And same thing for tomorrow afternoon's game at 2 o'clock out there at Founders Park, where, you end up getting it wrapped up pretty neatly on a day where people have a lot more time. But, again, if you stayed up late last night, you got treated to an entertaining game and one that you believe South Carolina had a chance in, at least in those last couple of innings, but unfortunately did not end up being the case. So we'll see what they can do in game number 2 coming up this afternoon, 5:30. First pitch pregame coverage starting at 5:15. All right here on the game. Jack Veltri was out there late last night at Founders Park. Hopefully he is awake this morning and we can talk to him, get his thoughts on what he saw go down out there, and look ahead to game number 2 coming up later on this afternoon. That's next. Again, Tyler Head, broadcasting live out of the Darlington Raceway. I want to say thank you so much to our friends over at Schroeder's Towing that have allowed not only myself, but Bill Gunter, Jen Jensen, and Preston Thorne, who were here this morning for the early game, to be out here at the racetrack. Certainly appreciate that. And it's obviously very cool that we get to be out here and get to do this. So again, Jack Felcher coming up next. It's the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Friday morning here on the game.
A 3-2 pitch coming. And this is pounded up the third baseline and fair. Inside the bag, off the wall. Messina comes home, and it will be the second double in a row for Kennedy Jones. His third RBI in a 4-hit night.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Friday on the Game. Again, I'm broadcasting live out at Darlington Raceway. Thanks to our friends at Schroeder's Towing for allowing me to be out here. That was the call last night on the Gamecock Radio Network. Derek Scott on the second of Kennedy Jones' 2 RBIs, driving in the second of 2 doubles for his 3 RBIs last night. And one of the bright spots for South Carolina, unfortunately, they did end up falling 14-10 to the Bulldogs out there at Founders Park. Our guy Jack Belcher is now joining me on the Love Chevrolet phone lines. And Jack, I was kind of worried you might actually still be asleep this morning. It was a very late night for you and everybody out there in the press box, I'm sure.
Yeah, first off, thanks for having me on. But yeah, I didn't go to bed till probably like 2 or 3 last night. It was a late night, and I think you said it too in one of your tweets. Let's never have an 8 o'clock start time, and I'm much more down with 5:30 tonight.
Well, you know what's going to happen. Today's game and tomorrow's game are going to be like pitchers' duels that end up 2-1 and going to be done in like 2.5 hours, right?
I'm fine with that. It gives me the rest of the night and day to enjoy myself. So I'm fine with that. So
that's very true. Let's start off with pitching. I got somebody that texted in our Firehouse Subs text line 803-404-6100, and Alan says Kimball should never start for the Gamecocks again. And when you look at the results in these past couple games, especially last night, I can understand the sentiment. Didn't even make it through the full first inning. Only went 1/3 of the inning, 2 hits. 4 runs with just the 1 strikeout and 2 walks. It's been a rough go of it for him as of late, and the last night was the worst example of that, unfortunately.
Yeah, Roman's definitely been struggling lately. There's just a lot of things that aren't clicking. I think the big thing is that, it's just he's facing a really tough lineup, and that's no excuse, but Mark Kingston was saying after the game that what he's noticing is that Roman's leaving too many balls up in the, above the zone. And, Roman needs to pitch up in the zone, not above the zone. And Kingston said there's a big difference with that. When he's pitching at the top of the zone, he's getting a lot of fly balls and swings and misses and stuff. So, he needs to find how to get back to that. And I don't think it should be in this starting role on, Thursdays and Fridays. I think he needs to be coming out of the bullpen in more of just a low pressure situation right now. I just think it's just I don't know. I think it's damaging for the kid's confidence, and I'm sure he wants to go out there and pitch better than anyone right now and help his team win. But unfortunately, he's not doing that right now. I feel bad for him, but at the same time, I think they should have started Ty Good last night. And even though Ty didn't provide a ton of length, going 4 innings on 86 pitches. Look, he gave you a chance to win the game.
We're going to have Eli Jones on the mound later this afternoon. And again, it's TBA for tomorrow, but we assume that's going to be Dylan Eskew unless he has to come out of the bullpen tonight. It finally kind of felt like South Carolina was settling into a groove with those starters over these past couple of weeks. But like you said, I think, for next weekend series against Tennessee, you probably need to reevaluate at least that first game starter. And again, Ty Good up to this point. Even he went 4 innings last night, so he gave you some decent length. And, like everybody else, did give up a fair amount of hits and a few runs as well. So, that's probably going to be your best option. You hate that you're still kind of mixing up the lineup going into your last series of the regular season, but you do what you have to do, I guess.
Yeah, look, it is what it is at this point. I think long term, and I hate saying this, I just think South Carolina's got a real rotation problem, and I hope I'm wrong about this, but I don't know. It's just I think you really need good pitching to make a run in the postseason, and look, if you don't have consistent starters and you're getting these types of outings, how far can you really expect to go? You really need guys like Eli Jones to step up and, pitch like they had been before this little rough stretch here. And I think he can get back to it today. I think there's so much on the line for South Carolina today, just for the bigger picture of, okay, they probably got to win today in order to, have a chance to win the series, but they also need to win this series to potentially host a regional. So there's a lot of factors going into this, and I think Eli will hopefully step up today. I think he definitely will. And then with tomorrow, honestly, in the back of my head, Tyler, I'm still thinking that maybe Mark Kingston is crazy enough to start Garrett Gainey tomorrow. I mean, I don't know. The fact that he didn't pitch tonight just tells me that, like, it's probably like a 50-50 chance at this point, because I don't know. Depending on what happens today, I could totally see that happening.
Interesting. Well, with Kimball's rough start last night, Georgia was able to jump on South Carolina with 4 runs in the top of the first inning. No surprise, Charlie Condon got the party started with his double that was able to bring in Corey Collins, the leadoff guy. How much of a disadvantage? And South Carolina scored 10 runs themselves. That's nothing to be ashamed of, certainly, especially against a pitching staff at Georgia that's done better as of late. How much did it hurt South Carolina having to play from behind the entire night last night?
It killed them. And, I was kind of looking back at the lines last night and stuff. What I'm confused about is that, you're trailing by, I think, 3 runs in the 5th inning. And Ty Good is obviously, his pitch count's going up. The trainer just come out to the mound and whatnot. And, I mean, I don't know. You go with Tyler Dean, who hasn't pitched in a little bit here. And, or I shouldn't say that. He hasn't been used as often as your regulars. And I don't know. To me, that just felt like an odd move. I mean, not a knock against the kid. I mean, I'm sure he's a good pitcher, but he's got a 7.5 ERA on the season. Why not go with someone like? I mean, you could have even gone with Drake Quinter, someone like that. I mean, I don't know. The game was still 3 runs, and obviously you give up 3 more runs right there, and it becomes a 10-4 game. It's just, I mean, they had to play from behind the whole night, and there's no excuse. It really did start with the starting pitching, in my opinion. But I mean, at that point, it felt a little weird. But I don't know.
Again, talking to my guy, Jack Felcher from Gamecock Central, recapping last night's 14-10 loss for South Carolina over Georgia. And, of course, I don't think anybody saw South Carolina going into this series and sweeping the Bulldogs, but winning 2 out of 3, certainly realistic. But now, what is the sense of urgency that this creates for South Carolina, knowing you got to win these next 2 games with, again, a pitching staff that is a little bit questionable right now?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, this Georgia offense, there really aren't many easy outs in this lineup. I mean, I don't think there's any at all. I mean, 1 through 9, it's literally, I think it's a better lineup than South Carolina right now, just with the way Georgia has, Charlie Condon, Gonzalez, Collins, Phelps. I mean, these are all guys spread out throughout the lineup that can do some, do some mashing. But I think for South Carolina, you really do need to hope that your pitching does the job the next 2 games. And I think the good news is that, despite losing yesterday, you didn't have to use all your best arms. I mean, you used Ty Good. That was a given. And you used Chris Veach for 1 inning. He'll more likely than not be available to pitch another game this weekend. He only threw 17 pitches. But now you have the rest of your guys available. So this really does give you the option, like, if, hopefully Eli Jones gives you a good start, then you don't have to use a ton of guys, and then you're really set up well for Saturday, where, I mean, it's all hands on deck at that point. But, yeah, it really needs to be a sense of urgency. If someone's struggling, I think you need to pull them. If, if something's just not working, you got to make a change, I think. And, you got to do whatever I think it takes to win the series.
Cole Messina, rough night last night, ends up striking out 4 times. We've kind of seen this as a little bit of a trend. Kentucky a couple weeks ago had 3 strikeouts on Friday night, had a couple strikeouts against A&M in the 1 game that he played of that series. What is his issue with facing aces of staff, or at least the first starter of the weekend for these series in the SEC play?
Yeah, look, I mean, the guy's been playing very good baseball lately, right? And at some point, even the best hitters are going to struggle from time to time. And it was just one of those nights where he couldn't get, ahead of the pitch he wanted to, I'm sure. And I mean, he's fouling off a good amount of pitches. It's just, his at bats just, it didn't go the way he wanted. And it's never a good thing when you strike out 4 times in a game. But the good news for him is that the rest of the lineup kind of picked him up a little bit. I mean, Parker Nolan, Kenny Jones, and Dalton Reeves all had 2 or more hits right behind him. So I think that just shows that, while one guy has a bad game, the other guys out there can go out there and do some damage. But at the same time, like, this is a point that I need to make here. I mean, when you score 10 runs, you should win the game. I mean, there's no excuse for losing a game 14-10. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think Cole will be fine. It's just one game, but at the same time, I mean, you got to be able to win when you're scoring 10 runs.
Well, hopefully tonight and tomorrow fare a little bit better, and hopefully you're not out at the ballpark as late as you were last night. Try and get a nap in, and hopefully the rest of the series goes well for the Gamecocks. Appreciate it as always, Jack.
Thank you so much, my man. Definitely appreciate it.
All right, Jack Veltri from Gamecock Central. And again, second game coming up this afternoon, 5:30 first pitch pregame coverage, starting at 5:15 here on the game tomorrow afternoon. 2 o'clock first pitch, 1:45 pregame here on the game to wrap up the series. Again, I'm broadcasting live out at the Darlington Raceway in the closet of the media center. Coming up next, going to be talking to Todd Gilliland, who will be in action on Sunday in the Goodyear 400. Also coming up later on this hour, your next chance to win some tickets to the Goodyear 400 if you answer some NASCAR trivia correctly. So keep it locked right here on the game. Again, Tyler Head out here all morning long at the Darlington Raceway. Thanks to our friends over at Schroeder's Towing for allowing me to be out here. Todd Gilliland coming up next on the Extra Point here on the game.
And welcome back into the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on the game. So excited. We are getting closer and closer to throwback weekend at the Darlington Raceway. Goodyear 400 coming up on Sunday, 3 o'clock. You can watch it on Fox and listen to it on the Motor Racing Network. So pleased to be joined now by one of the guys can be in the field driving the Generator Ford Mustang number 38, Todd Gilliland. Todd, first of all, appreciate your time for us this morning. I'm so excited for Darlington, as are many of us around here in South Carolina. What's your excitement level for heading to the track that's too tough to tame this weekend?
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. I love, like you said, the whole South Carolina area is super cool. We always have super good support when we go down there. And just Darlington Raceway is a super cool racetrack. So from a driver's side, it's fun. It's really tough. You're running right against the wall for 400 miles this weekend, and then obviously 500 when we go back later. So it's definitely a really tough one. Keeps you mentally focused, but super excited for it.
The conversation this week obviously revolves around what happened on Sunday night at Kansas, that thrilling finish between Kyle Larson and Chris Buescher, closest finish in NASCAR history. You came away with a very solid 14th in that race. You guys played some strategy late that got you up there in the top 10. So first of all, congratulations on the strong run. Was that race as fun to be in as it was to watch in person? I've been a fan for over 20 years. That legitimately might be one of the best races I've ever seen.
I actually, thank you. We did get a good finish. We definitely made the most of our day. And I definitely had a lot of fun. That was definitely the most fun I've had in a really long time. My car was definitely good. I felt like, definitely in the game. I feel like we're still making progress as Front Row Motorsports, and still just, getting better, every time we go to a mile and a half. But yeah, that was just an awesome race. Watching everybody be able to race as hard as they were in front of us. And then obviously looking back, I didn't even realize how hard everyone was racing throughout the whole field through the whole race. So, and then, yeah, for the ending to be that good, it's, really cool, right? There's some races that are really good at the beginning through the middle, where this one was just extremely good. I feel like start to finish. So that was cool.
And NASCAR's just been off to a great start this season, almost halfway through the regular season as of right now. In fact, this weekend will be halfway through the regular season. And we've had great finishes, places like Atlanta, and now this weekend at Kansas had some really just great racing, almost on a week in, week out basis. How cool is it for you to be a part of this kind of resurgence of NASCAR in this next gen era?
Yeah, it's insanely cool. This is obviously a sport that I've always, grown up watching, always loved, always wanted to be a big part of it. And yeah, even if, I'm not the one, right, in these finishes at the moment. We watched the Kurt Busch and Ricky Craven finish, right, for like 20 years. And, I'm probably going to be the old man one day, right, of, I was in that race, back then, and at Kansas, where, the closest finish ever. And really, like you said, the next gen car initially brought a lot of excitement. And that can boost ratings, right, for a little bit here and there. But our great racing has really just, boosted it since then and kept it up at a higher standard than it was before. So, there's positives and negatives to, every race car on earth. But, I definitely I'm super, super proud to be, part of NASCAR right now.
In talking to Todd Gilliland, going to be piloting the Generator Ford Mustang for Front Row Motorsports this upcoming weekend in the Goodyear 400 out at Darlington Raceway. You mentioned the strides that Front Row has been making. You've been there through the entire tenure in the next gen era since 2022. What have you seen out of the team this year? I know you guys have the new technical alliance that's helped out a lot, but what kind of strides have you seen from your perspective that you guys have made to be more competitive, to lead laps, to get these pole positions, and to really kind of slowly become a front runner?
Yeah, like you said, to me, it's nothing, really huge, right? It's all the little things, all the details. I feel like I have a stronger team, at least on my end. As a 38 group, I feel like I have the strongest team I've had in the Cup Series, and that's super exciting to me. I feel like all our details on our cars are, much better and much more consistent week after week. The 34 guys, a lot of the same guys as last year. I would say the biggest thing is just having information. We're getting all the information for performance, and a lot more from Penske. So all that stuff is going really well for us. definitely our guys doing just a really good job at, going through all the information, making the right decisions, build really fast cars. We have a lot of great women at the shop that are putting these things together in the right way and, are doing it consistently. So it's a really cool part.
It's one thing to lead laps on, like a pit cycle or something like that when you're staying out for a long time. It's another thing to be controlling the race like you were doing at Daytona and Atlanta early on in the season. What's it been like to just run up front with some of these guys that you grew up watching over the years, going to the track with your dad?
Yeah, it's been really cool too. We got off to a hot start, right? Daytona, Atlanta, we led a lot of laps. And it's just nice, right? Like for me, I'm still one of the younger-ish guys that are racing out there, and all this stuff is still a big confidence booster still. Racing against, I raced against Truex for a really long time at Atlanta and really hard. I think Logano was up there. And these are all guys, right, that I think and are, right, champions of the sport and really contenders week after week. So just feeling like I can belong with these guys and, whether it's a little bit of respect that I gain with them, all that stuff is really good for me and for me on a personal level and also, from the professional side, I think it definitely helps me, whether it's in that moment or, also down the road when those guys have a little bit more confidence that, they can trust me, race on me and, just won't maybe take advantage of me like the first chance they get.
Couple more minutes here with NASCAR driver Todd Gilliland ahead of this Sunday's Goodyear 400 at Darlington Raceway. Darlington has been an interesting track for you in your first couple years here in the Cup Series. Spring race seems to treat you a whole lot better than the fall race does. Average finish of 13th in the spring, 26th in the fall. And I know you obviously had the extra 100 miles when you come back for Labor Day weekend. What's been the difference for you behind the wheel in these 4 races that you've had at Darlington so far?
Yeah, that's interesting. I definitely didn't know that there was necessarily one way or the other of which race you ran better, but yeah, I think we've just caught up in kind of messes in the fall race. I feel like it's definitely been one of our better racetracks. Just as far as speed goes, consistency, all that stuff. I feel like this is one that we can really contend well at. So confidence is always big, and then just having fun, right? It's what is life without having fun? And I always love coming to Darlington. So I think all those things are why I think it's maybe one of our probably top 50% tracks. Yeah, you just got to survive it, man. It's really, you hear people say it a lot. It's driver racing the racetrack more so than other cars out there, and I definitely think that's true.
Obviously, throwback weekend, a lot of great paint schemes coming up. Kyle Larson's got his cornflakes throwback. I'm very excited for. I saw that Busch Beer's rolling out a classic look for Ross Chastain this weekend. You're going to be throwing it back. First ever Cars Tour win back in 2015. How did this come together, and how special is it for you to throw back to such a cool and pivotal moment in your career?
Yeah, it's awesome. I always love seeing the throwbacks, and for a while we didn't really do one or anything. And yeah, this year I think the theme was supposed to be like grassroots something. So yeah, we kind of threw it back to my grassroots of late model racing all around North Carolina, South Carolina, all around here, and that was pretty much my late model paint scheme for the majority of it. And also, like you said, got the first ever Cars Tour race win. So yeah, it's cool to see what that has become. Cool to see obviously where we're at now as far as my career and racing in the Cup Series, all that good stuff. So yeah, it's just really cool. There's a ton of memories that come along with it. Lots of hard work along the way, and yeah, like I said, it's just really cool to think back of all those memories for a week.
Last one for you here. If you had a kind of a dream throwback that you could create yourself, what would it be? I know your dad drove some cool those M&M cars back in the day. Anything like that, or any particular car you think you'd like to throw back to one day?
Yeah, I think like you said, I think an old M&M's car would be really cool. Obviously now that they're out of the sport, it'd be much more of a throwback, right? It's not like that they're running every weekend. And that's a car everyone can like, right? Who doesn't love candy?
Sure.
There's at least me me growing up and always loved that car. So I think that would be a really awesome one day.
Well, Todd, we certainly appreciate your time. Very excited for all the action going on this weekend at the track that is Too Tough to Tame, and certainly want to wish you 38 team and Front Row Motorsports, the best of luck.
Awesome. Thank you.
And Todd Gilliland, driver of the 38 Generator Ford Mustang for Front Row Motorsports this upcoming weekend at Darlington. We'll come back, continue on today's edition of the Extra Point here on the game.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head with you again, broadcasting live out at the Darlington Raceway, out here all morning long. So excited to be here again. This is my wheelhouse. I'm like a kid in a candy store. I think I told my wife sometime this week that I'll be spending a lot on memorabilia and stuff at the souvenir stands once I get done doing the show here. So I love being here. Appreciate everybody out at Darlington Raceway, President Josh Harris, and everybody that allows us to be out here and to do these shows, and certainly everybody here at Cumulus Media and the game that put in the work to allow us to come out here, as well as our friends over at Schroeder's Towing for sponsoring our shows here today. With that, it is now time to give away some tickets to Sunday's Goodyear 400. Ed,
time to give away some tickets to the Goodyear 400 at Darlington.
Rick Hendrick wins 296. William Byron wins the Goodyear 400.
Here is some NASCAR trivia on the game. First person to get the question right wins.
I got Ed Bird waiting back in the Herndon Chevrolet studios to take your calls. 803-404-6100. First person to answer right gets those tickets. Question this hour is, what year did the Southern 500 make its return to its original Labor Day date? There's a period of time where NASCAR moved the Southern 500 away from Labor Day. What year did it make its return to its classic Labor Day date? Again, first caller to answer that right now wins pair of tickets to Sunday's Goodyear 400. While Ed Bird is taking your phone calls there, let's take a look at this weekend's race and who the favorites are going into this weekend. Now, when you look at the NASCAR series, the Cup Series as a whole this season, it's been dominated by two teams, Hendrick Motorsports and Joe Gibbs Racing. In fact, out of the 12 races run so far this season, the only two races that have not been won by a driver from one of those organizations has been at Talladega a couple weeks ago with Tyler Reddick, who drives for 2311, and then the Atlanta Motor Speedway race, race number 2 of the season, which was won by Daniel Suarez of Team Trackhouse. So when you're kind of looking at who the favorites are going to this weekend, and I didn't get a chance to hear Preston, Jen, and Bill make their picks a little while ago, you're likely going to be looking at a winner coming from one of those stables. Denny Hamlin and William Byron both have won 3 races apiece so far this season. Both those guys have a good track record here. Denny Hamlin's won here multiple times. William Byron won the spring race a season ago. But the odds-on favorite to win, according to Vegas Insider, is none other than Kyle Larson. And that's an interesting pick. Kyle Larson coming off of obviously the thrilling historical win last week at Kansas, the closest finish in NASCAR history, beating Chris Buescher to the line by just about 3 inches. That's how close it was. Beat the finish that Ricky Craven and Kurt Busch had back in 2003 to set the new record there. But he's also really good at Darlington. Now, he finally broke through and got his first career win here, at least at the Cup Series level, this past fall in the Southern 500 to start the NASCAR playoffs. But he had come so close so many times before. It's a track that he runs so well at. The way this track races, it's a very abrasive track, one that chews up tires, one that you're kind of sliding around really on edge a whole lot. And that plays perfectly into Kyle Larson's wheelhouse. So I would not be surprised if he picked up his 3rd win of the season and 2nd win in a row this weekend in the Goodyear 400. As I mentioned, Denny Hamlin, who is so good at this racetrack, has won here multiple times. Many Southern 500s, won the COVID return race a couple of years ago, or one of the COVID return races a couple years ago as well. He has the 2nd best odds according to Vegas, a Vegas Insider. After him, his teammate Martin Truex Jr., searching for his first win of the season, has also won a couple Southern 500s himself with the 3rd best odds. And then Tyler Reddick, who was in the mix last fall to win the Southern 500, up there battling with Kyle Larson as well as Kevin Harvick in the late stages of that race. Ended up coming up a little bit short there, but very similar to Kyle Larson. Both those guys coming from a dirt background, have that kind of driving style to where they adapt really well to these worn out, abrasive type of racetracks. And I would not be surprised to see Tyler Reddick in victory lane if it did come down to that later on today. Of course, it's also throwback weekend, tons and tons of cool throwback schemes. For anybody that is not familiar with throwback weekend, it's literally you take a paint scheme from the past, you adapt it to your car today, and it's really cool the creativity some of these teams have with what they do with their throwbacks. And my favorite, the one that's taking the cake for me, is actually going to be Kyle Larson's this weekend. For anybody that was a fan in the 90s, you may remember Terry Labonte in that famous cornflakes, yellow, white, and red car. Well, Kyle Larson's running that throwback scheme this weekend, and when I can get my hand on that die cast, I certainly will do that. So very excited for that, and just the celebration of the history of NASCAR that goes on Throwback Weekend as well. Our guy Ed Bird tells me Bubba has won. Congratulations to Bubba for winning tickets to Sunday's Goodyear 400 out here at the Darlington Raceway. And for anybody that's curious on what the answer was, it was 2015. In 2015, NASCAR returned the Southern 500. At that time, Darlington's only date on the calendar to its original Labor Day weekend date back in 2004 when NASCAR shifted the schedules around, added a race to Texas Motor Speedway. Unfortunately, Darlington got shifted from its traditional Labor Day date. That was when NASCAR was expanding across the country, and unfortunately for them, they decided to get away from one of their rooted traditions in the sport, that being the Southern 500 in September. Thankfully, when the schedules got shifted back around about 10 years ago, they decided to return to its rightful place where it's been ever since, and hopefully will never leave again. But that's coming up in September. Of course, this weekend, it's the Goodyear 400. And again, congratulations to Bubba. We'll have more chances for you to win tickets to that as the morning goes along. Coming up in hour number 2, as he does each and every Friday, intern Joe going to be hanging out with me. We'll recap what happened last night on the Diamond out at Founders Park. Also get into some football thoughts, as there's been some interesting conversations about Gamecock football from Coach Beamer, as well as some national pundits around the country as well. It's coming up in hour number 2. It's Out Ahead, broadcasting live from Darlington Raceway, going up until noon here on the game. If you live in the Columbia area, it rained a lot yesterday morning and on through the day. And if you have an open crawl space under your home, you might have some standing water underneath it. You maybe want to get out there and check just to be sure. High humidity and condensation in your crawl space can create an environment for mold, mildew, and pests, including things like termites. Moisture will lead to things like wood rot and floor joist problems as well. Musty smells or awful odors that come from that mold and mildew in your crawl space can also cause serious health issues to you and your family, like runny nose, itchy eyes, and coughs, because up to half of the air that you breathe in your home comes from your crawl space. If you're having any issues with your crawl space, you need to check out our friends at Canty Foundation Specialists. Go online to cantycanfixit.com and schedule an appointment today. They'll send a professional out to come evaluate your home's foundation to make sure you and your family can live comfortably. Again, schedule an appointment online today at cantycanfixit.com. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Friday on the Game. Again, broadcasting live out at the Darlington Raceway, getting set for Throwback Weekend, Goodyear 400, coming up on Sunday. Again, already gave away one pair of tickets in that last hour. Got more coming up a little bit later on this hour and the 11 o'clock hour, too, during the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Keep it locked right here all morning long for your next chance to win those tickets. Brush up on your NASCAR trivia so you can be the one that can win those tickets. Waiting to be joined by our guy, Intern Joe, hopefully here in a couple minutes. We'll jump back in to some of the baseball conversation. Last night sucks, right? You lose, which you never want to lose, obviously. But now, as I talked about with Jack in the last hour, now you're playing from behind for the rest of the series, which, especially against a high-powered offense like Georgia, that's a tough ask. That is an uphill battle to climb, especially if you go out tonight and let's say that Eli Jones gives up, 3 or so runs in the first inning, and South Carolina can't match that in the bottom of the first, and you're just still playing from behind the entire series. And now, look, we've seen South Carolina show the ability to come from behind, like we saw this past weekend against Missouri in that Sunday game, where they were able to put together an onslaught of offense in those last couple of innings to walk out of there with the victory. But that obviously, is not guaranteed, guaranteed every single time. So again, hopefully you can get some offensive success kind of right out of the gate to jump on things and to put yourself in a good position once the game gets rolling there, and hopefully you're not exhausting your entire bullpen, because that's the thing. And Jack brought up a really good point last hour that I hadn't really even thought of, but it shouldn't be the case where South Carolina, you roll out Tyler Dean, who hasn't had as much action this season, and his ERA is obviously pretty high. When the game was only a 3-run deficit, and you were still very much in it. And now you've seen in years past, if you're just getting completely boat raced, and you obviously have to still finish out the game, you'll throw somebody out there to eat the innings, right? Where you know your chances of winning are pretty slim, but you're not hurting the rest of your weekend lineup to to keep those guys fresh for the other 2 games of the series, where you could theoretically still win and still try and take the series. But for a game last night where Carolina, again, was scoring runs themselves, scored 10 last night, which should usually be good enough to win you a game, you're still very much in it. And that was an interesting decision to put Tyler Dean out there, as opposed to maybe using a different arm in your bullpen. I do think it's an interesting point that Jack brought up as well, that while we kind of assume that SQ is going to be the guy to get the start tomorrow, as case with these TBA outings, that maybe even Gary Gainey could factor in. He certainly seems to have gotten his confidence back as of late. He's a classic example of a pitcher being a little bit of a head case, which, if you know anything about pitchers, that they live and die by performances. And if they have not been performing up to par, then that can affect them for longer than you think it would. I remember, like with the Braves, Mike Foltynewicz in that 2019 playoff series against the Cardinals, he got rocked in like the first inning of that game. It's when they gave up an 8, 9, 10 runs, something like that, to start up the game, and obviously lost the game. And then Foltynewicz went through that entire offseason thinking about that. And when they tried to pitch him at the start of the next year, which was the COVID-shortened year, he had even more time to think about it. He just wasn't the same anymore. And in that series had obviously ruined him. And in fact, Ed, if you can, go back to tomorrow or yesterday's cut list, and let's find cut number 11. This was Coach Kingston yesterday, or 2 days ago, talking to the media about the potential of Garrett Gainey maybe becoming a starter. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, well, as you've seen, I'm not afraid to try different things to try to get us a little bit closer to where we could be 100% capacity. And that's been jostled around a little bit in our coaching staff meetings is do we need to find a different role, a better role for him? I think what you've seen with him is especially starting last week, is his outing was longer, much like a Ty Good coming out of the bullpen, almost as a secondary starter, if you will. I think Gainey may eventually grow into that. But we also, you know what, we may one game, and maybe it's in the postseason where we pull a Michael Roth out and just say, you're going to start your first game. And I know Michael's first start was in the College World Series, but that turned out pretty well. So I don't think you can ever be scared of trying something that your gut tells you might really help the team. And everything's always on the table.
And for Gainey, he has not started any games this season for South Carolina, has come out of the bullpen in every single one of his, every single one of his outings. But he's definitely been pitching better as of late. And he's, like I said, kind of the classic example of, pitchers maybe being a little bit of a head case, because he was rock solid in those first couple of outings. In the non-conference, we of course know gave up the home run that ended up, being the end of that Clemson game. But for a while, that was his only surrendered run until you got into conference play. And then he started getting pushed around a little bit. Alabama gave up a couple runs there over the course of a couple games. His A&M outing wasn't all that great. He was really struggling, and you almost kind of wondered, because again, he came over from Liberty with with Coach Matt Williams, and you almost kind of wondered, like, man, is this guy just not good enough to be able to pitch at this level of baseball? And fortunately, he's been able to kind of settle in. His last 4 outings, between one game at Kentucky, the midweek against East Tennessee State, and then 2 games last weekend against Missouri. I mean, he worked a total of, that's 8 innings between those games, only giving up 3 hits and no earned runs between all those outings. So he certainly seems to have his groove back a little bit, and especially if you're kind of looking for a spark in your weekend rotation, that might be a viable option. So again, we'll see what what Coach Kingston ultimately decides to do, what he and Matt Williams, ultimately decide to do, coming up for tomorrow. But again, it's going to be Eli Jones getting the start tonight for the Gamecocks, as he's kind of slid into that second role. And again, you can get length out of him for the most part. Now, again, last weekend was the anomaly, for him, but he's your experienced guy, and hopefully he can get you, I don't know, at minimum somewhere around maybe four innings, if nothing else, to at least where you're not having to tax your bullpen quite as much. And like I said, he's somebody that we know his identity. He's going to give up runs, or not, he's going to give up hits, It's limiting the runs that are the big deal, for him at the end of the day. And when you look at his numbers over these past couple of outings, last weekend against Missouri, of course, only made it 2 2/3, which was the longest of any of the starting pitchers, but still not great. 7 hits, gave up 5 runs, gave up the back-to-back, or gave up back-to-back, or gave up the home runs a couple weeks ago against Kentucky, also 7 hits. So his, limiting guys for scoring runs has not been good as of late. And one thing that really sticks out to me is his strikeouts are down. So it seems like his command is a little bit off, because when you look at some of his starts earlier on in the season, he was getting, 5, 4, 5, 4, 6 strikeouts against Florida a couple weeks ago, which was by far, one of his best outings of the entire season. But these past couple weeks, those numbers have dipped a little bit. 3 against Arkansas, 3 against Kentucky, and then 2 last weekend against Missouri. So that command is just not quite where it needs to be as of right now, it seems. Hopefully you can get that back on track. And again, you're not having to tax your bullpen any more than you already need to at this point. But again, we're facing a Georgia lineup that has the ability and the caliber to hit at the clip that they do, that could certainly, end up becoming a problem. So we'll see what what the ultimate answer for that is going to be for Coach Kingston, coming up through the rest of the weekend. Hopefully your offense can continue what it did from last night, because again, you scored 10 runs, you should more often than not be able to win that game. And maybe if South Carolina jumps out to a lead early, we're telling a different story. But having to play from behind and routinely claw your way back from a 7-3-run deficit, those kind of things, really put you behind the 8 ball. So hopefully get some good offensive production. Kennedy Jones again has obviously been really been clicking as of late. You've had this good run with Petry Messina over these past couple series, but against Messina last night, struggling 0 for 5 with 4 strikeouts. Petry, decent night, 2 for 4 at the plate, was not able to drive in any runs and had 2 strikeouts himself. So hopefully those guys can can get back on track with with this afternoon's game, and then the series finale coming up tomorrow afternoon out there at Founders Park. And as we talked about, going into this weekend where you knew that you were on the fringe of hosting, right? Whether right or wrong, this is what the projections are. That South Carolina is the projected 16th seed as of right now, paired up with the Lexington Regional, where if you handle your business over the course of the next 2 weeks between Georgia and Tennessee, you're in a position to maybe move up. I don't know, maybe your ceiling is 12th or something like that. It depends on what teams do around you. But you have the ability to put yourself in a little bit better spot by jumping up a few of those projections if you could split over the course of these next 2 weekends. So 6-6 in your final 2 series. But again, now you're behind the 8 ball. If you lose tonight, then you're having to say, okay, well, for one, don't get swept by Georgia. At least win 1 game to get out of it, and find a way to to go win 2 games up there in Knoxville, which is certainly not going to be easy either to hopefully salvage that hosting. But because if you lose the series against Georgia and you lose against Tennessee next week, which Tennessee is the best team in the country right now, so that knock wouldn't be as big. But especially if you lose this series against Georgia, you're potentially having to go on the road for your regional as opposed to hosting it out at Founders Park. So hopefully that does not end up being the case, and Carolina can find their footing and get a foundation for the rest of the weekend. Again, coming up with game number 2 tonight at 5:30, pregame coverage starting at 5:15 right here on the game. And with another game means another chance for you to win the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway. The pot is at $1,000 with no Grand Slamming hit last night. And we'll see if a hitter can finally get that done for South Carolina for the first time this season. Again, go online to 1075thegame.com and register for your chance to win the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway. Coach Beamer was on a podcast recently, the No Spotlight podcast, talking about a lot of things relating to NIL. And I thought he had some interesting comments that sound an awful lot like what Brian Kelly said a little bit earlier on this week, that he was raked over the coals by a lot of people for. We'll dive into that coming up next. It is the Extra Point Tirehead, again, live out at Darlington Raceway. Going to be out here until noon. Going to have another chance for you to win tickets to Sunday's Goodyear 400 for answering some NASCAR trivia a little bit later on the hour. And again, thanks to our friends over at Schroeder's Towing for allowing not only myself, but Bill, Preston, and Jen from the early game for being out here as well. Beamer conversation coming up next. The Extra Point here on the game. Hey, Joe, what's happening?
No, not a whole lot, Tyler. How are you? Sorry.
No, all good, man. Here, I'm about to leave the room for a second. I'll come right back, okay?
All right, perfect. Yeah, all good.
Hey Joe, we'll just talk a little bit of baseball here. I teased some Beamer stuff. We'll get to that in this segment or the third segment. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Sweet. And welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you again, broadcasting live out at the Darlington Raceway here for Throwback Weekend. We'll get to some of the Beamer conversation here in just a moment. Our guy intern Joe is now joining me as he does each and every Friday. Joe, I imagine, like many people, you stayed up very late watching that game last night and maybe slept in a little bit, which is okay. I get it. It was ridiculous that game took 4 hours.
Yeah, Tyler, absolutely. Late night at Founders Park. The action went late on into the night. Obviously, it was a late game, started at 8. We knew that it was going to be a long one with how high powered these offenses are. But yeah, it was quite a late one. 10-14 for an 8 o'clock game is crazy. But yeah, I'm sure we'll break it all down. But yeah, quite a late one last night, Tyler.
I said whoever, and maybe it was Mickey Mouse himself, I don't know, whoever decided that these two teams should have a first pitch at 8 o'clock on a Thursday night, I hope they bang their toe on a coffee table today, personally.
Yeah, again, yeah, it was quite late, and again, there was a couple mound visits. Jordan K pointed it out that were well after 11:30. So, yeah, did sleep in a little bit, Tyler.
It's okay. And we had a little bit of chippiness between these two teams as well. A lot of hit batters. And Coach Kingston getting a little bit fired up coming out of the dugout. Warnings issued to both teams. And that's just game number one. There's still 18 more innings of action between these two teams over the next couple of days. If this continues, we might have some dugouts getting cleared out before the weekend's over.
Yeah, and as is the SEC, Tyler. It's heating up. The schedule's heating up as we are heading into postseason play. So I mean these two teams certainly don't like each other after last night. Really chippy, really hard fought game. I mean the offenses. I mean when you're scoring that many runs, it's going to be hard not to get a little chippy and celebrate after you pimp a homer and stuff like that. So yeah, I certainly saw this series heating up a little bit, and obviously it did last night.
So I've kind of been debating this all morning. I talked with Jack about it in the last hour, and I was kind of going over some of Garrett Gainey's numbers in that last segment there before he hopped on. But what do you do about Roman Kimball from here forward? I get it. He was somebody that, returning from injury this season, you knew was not going to give you, as much length as somebody like Eli Jones. But these last couple of outings had just been very, very rough for him and couldn't even get to the second out of the first inning last night. Like that is a serious problem. And you don't want to still be shifting around your starting lineup going into your last series of the weekend or of the season, regular season against Tennessee next weekend. But I'd be hard pressed to say you got to throw Roman Kimball out there again.
Yeah, I mean it's a really tough decision to make because again, going into this weekend, we knew how high powered Georgia's offense was. And we knew that there were going to be a lot of runs scored, but Roman Kimball's performance last night was not the greatest. And again, I think you have to start to reevaluate some things after that one, because Tennessee's also no joke, right? As their offense isn't statistically as good as Georgia's, but it's really really close. So this is the time of year that you need your starters to be really 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 good, and South Carolina just isn't finding that right now, and Roman Kimball's starting to have his struggles as well. So certainly something you need to look at going into next weekend.
Well, the good news is you're not facing one of the most high-powered offenses in the entire country in Georgia the next 2 days, right? Oh, that's right, you are. So
Yep.
hopefully Jones is outing today, and whoever ends up being the starter tomorrow, whether that be SQ or Gainey or somebody else, can kind of hold them at bay. And that's a point that I brought up to Jack in the last hour as well, that, you gave up 4 runs in the top of that first inning. And yes, South Carolina did score 3 themselves to make it interesting at the bottom of the first, but you spent the entire game playing from behind. And while, yes, South Carolina has shown the ability to come back, that's not the most ideal and most advantageous spot to be in, especially against an offense that is going to be able to score, 12, 15 runs themselves. South Carolina could just never get ahead of what Georgia was doing last night.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and it's gonna be hard. I mean, they've got an uphill battle the rest of the weekend now, and we knew again, coming into this weekend, we knew that it was going to be a high scoring series. It was just now a matter of, which offense could keep pace with the other one. And clearly, when you look at it last night, Georgia's continue their run being the best offense in the country. And again, South Carolina was playing catch up that entire game. And, I hate to say it, but I think it's going to be a little bit more of the same tonight. You just need your starters. I mean, if you're South Carolina, you need your starters to go long. Eli Jones, you need length, some length out of him to just bluster that bullpen a little bit and be the dam, if you will, to hold up this offense.
You're also going to need even more production out of your own offense, which is crazy to say when you scored 10 runs like you did last night. But my biggest thing that pops out to me is Cole Messina. And we've seen him struggle in these Friday games against, the preferable ace of staff against a lot of these teams. 4 strikeouts last night, ended up going 0 for 5. When you look at what his usual level of production is, if he goes 2 for 5 last night or something like that, it just gives you a little bit on offense. I can only wonder what kind of spark that would have been to where maybe you end up scoring 13 or 14 runs yourself. So hopefully you can get back on track tonight, because as we've talked about plenty, this offense goes as Ethan Petrie and Cole Messina go, and Petrie had a decent night, 2 for 4 at the plate. But when Messina's not out there contributing, it slows it down to a degree. And again, unfortunately, he came up 4 runs short last night.
Yeah, again, you need somebody like Moose, who's one of the leaders on your team, to step up in big moments when the lights are brightest. And unfortunately, last night that wasn't the case. Right? You hope the Moose can pick it up the rest of the weekend, but yeah, just not great when your stars aren't showing up. And I mean, yes, it's one game, and sure, but if we don't start to see some production by the end of the weekend, I think it would be a reason for concern for sure long term.
Game number 2 coming up this afternoon, 5:30 first pitch, pregame coverage starting at 5:15 right here on the game. Then tomorrow, 2 o'clock first pitch, 1:45 pregame here on the game as South Carolina looks to take the series against the Georgia Bulldogs. We'll switch gears over to football. Hear from Coach Beamer coming up next, speaking about this structure and the current state of college football and what kind of guys he's trying to bring into his team. And again, sounds a whole lot like what Brian Kelly said the other day. We'll dive into that coming up next. It is The Extra Point. He is Intern Joe. I'm Tyler Head, broadcasting live out at the Darlington Raceway all morning long, sponsored by our friends over at Schroeder's Towing on your Friday here on the game. Have you heard the thing that Brian Kelly said about, we're not in the business of buying players and stuff?
A little bit, yeah.
Oh, hold on. Sorry, I had my volume down. Go ahead.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, I got a cut from Beamer that's kind of similar to that, so we can
Perfect.
cut that a little bit, and then some of these, projections of what Sellers is going to be this fall. That should be good conversation.
Perfect. Yeah,
Right.
no, my night was really late last night because I picked up a summer job working at Salty.
Okay.
And so there was multiple as well occasions of gunshots last night. So
Oh God.
yeah, so like somebody at 2 a.m., like right as we were closing, right as we were getting ready to go home, somebody like
Mhm.
was drove by the restaurant and shot a shot at the truck in front of him.
Jeez.
And that was after a guy had pulled a gun on us on the door on the bus boys and door guys because we threw him out, and then he went like his wife pulled up his car, and then like dude, yeah, so that wild night. We were we have a quote from Frank Martin that says, "I'd rather be shot dead as a bouncer outside of a nightclub at 60 than be a member of the media." And so I sent that because me and Michael Sauls blew that quote up and put it in the newsroom at the Daily Gamecock.
Wow, man.
Yeah,
Well, glad you made it out of there.
I know it's crazy, and like yeah. So I didn't get to bed till like 4:30.
I understand. All good.
Yeah, yeah. So I appreciate it.
Out ahead along with you. Hanging out here at Darlington Raceway all morning long. Again, thanks to our friends at Schroeder's Towing for allowing us all to be out here, getting you set for Throwback Weekend, the Goodyear 400 coming up on Sunday. And again, coming up at the end of the hour, having another chance for you to win some tickets there with some NASCAR trivia. I want to dive into this. Intern Joe hanging out with me from Gamecock Central as he does each and every Friday. I want to dive into this. Some comments were made earlier on in the week by Brian Kelly that have kind of gone viral in the sports world about, at the surface level saying that LSU is not in the business of paying players to come to LSU. And, people kind of immediately jumped on that and said, well, you better get with it, or, because that's the nature of the business and you're going to suffer if not. But when you kind of take a deeper dive into what he said, he's really saying that's not what we want our program to be about, which I can understand. Coach Beamer was on the No Spotlights podcast a little bit earlier on this week, talking about all things NIL, asking about the Garnet Trust and all those kind of things, and plenty of things with today's structure of college football. I want you to listen to this this answer that he's giving, because I think it's very similar to what Brian Kelly was saying earlier on in the week about wanting guys to be at South Carolina for the right reasons.
I always want to make sure that that in the recruiting aspect of it, whether it be recruiting high school seniors or whether it be recruiting transfers, that they're choosing South Carolina for the right reasons. I want a guy that wants to be here for the right reasons. And I understand that there's a monetary part of it. There's an NIL part of it that's just a factor now. I get it. But when we're playing the University of Georgia, we're playing Clemson or whoever, and it's 4th and 1 in the fourth quarter and we got to have it. I want the guy that came to South Carolina for the right reasons and not because he got the best NIL deal from us. And to me, I truly believe this. I tell people all the time, I believe you win with people, and I want a bunch of championship people around me, and then be able to retain those guys also, because tampering and the transfer portal, it's a thing. And someone that that came to South Carolina for the right reasons, that is from this region, that wants to be here and leave a legacy, whether it be Asia Wilson in women's basketball, or whether it be Luke Doty and Tonka Hemingway and some of those guys I just mentioned in football, guys that are here for the right reasons. We've been able to keep here in this place they're passionate about. And the more that we can recruit guys like that and win with those people, I think the better off we're going to be.
And in a similar way to what Brian Kelly was saying the other day, Shane Beamer isn't against players getting paid, isn't against players, benefiting from their name, image, and likeness. But at the end of the day, your first priority should be wanting to be here at South Carolina and wanting to do what you need to do to help this team win. And, yes, the NIL becomes a part of that, but that's a secondary thing as opposed to a primary. And you do unfortunately have a lot of guys in today's world of college football that the first question they ask is, well, how much am I going to make when I go to your school? And, we're getting this growing sentiment of coaches that are like, no, that's not what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Right, and I think today's day and age with NIL and stuff like that, I think recruiting the type of person and type of player that you want is kind of the only thing that you can control nowadays. It gets really hard with NIL stuff like that. You can't really. I mean, there's restrictions when when you're recruiting a guy based off of that, right? And there always will be. So you're always looking for, the type of player that you want, the guy that can compete. Number one is good, will fit into the squad, will fit in with your culture. Number two, and that's always how recruiting's been. That's always how it's going to be at the end of the day. You're recruiting the quality of person, the quality of player, and it's got to be a fit, across the board, not just, monetarily, right? I think, you're looking for a little bit more than that, because nowadays, with the portal and everything like that, you're really just trying to make it work for that one season. I mean, you're going season by season at this point with the way the portal is. And so again, it's really, really hard to do, or to recruit guys nowadays. But I hear what Coach Kelly and Coach Beamer are saying, and it's something that's really interesting looking at it from the grand scheme of things.
Well, and as we know that seemingly every single week something new comes out about the future of NIL, for college football, and the process of the entire foundation being changed here within a year time, with players becoming employees and all that kind of stuff, which again will still have plenty of players that can ask that question of, okay, how much are you going to pay me to go to your school, or how much can I make at your school, as opposed to just wanting to go there for the development and hopefully trying to get your career to the next level. But again, it seems like a growing sentiment of coaches kind of sharing that same message and idea that I'm sure they hope that they're hoping is going to resonate with the future guys they're trying to recruit to their schools.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, again, some of these top guys, you hope, especially at the way to be top, that it's more than just a monetary decision, right? You hope that they're making their decision based on where exactly they want to play. They find the best fit. It's the spot that is going to be the best for them. And again, it's really when you factor NIL out of it. It really is. It's just recruiting how it used to be. And again, NIL is going to evolve. Again, we've talked about. I mean, the employee model coming up here soon. So I mean, it's money is it's going to the scales are tipping back down towards what it used to be a little bit, and it's not simply becoming a monetary decision now. There's going to be layers added to that. And again, I kind of like the shift of again recruiting at least getting a little bit more back to its core. But again, for some guys out there, it will be a financial decision from here forward.
Let's stick with football here. Something we've talked about a lot this week from On3, Cody Belair, who's the recruiting guru from a national perspective, went on Andy Staples' podcast and threw out that he thought that Lenore Sellers was a dark horse candidate for the Heisman Trophy, and despite the fact that he's obviously not started a game at the college level as of yet. We posted a poll on our Twitter yesterday that reads, Cody Belair sees Gamecocks quarterback Lenore Sellers as potential Heisman caliber dark horse candidate. What are your expectations for him? We have Pump the Brakes, which is no clue. A top 8 quarterback in the SEC, good enough to go bowling, and a serious breakout season. Pump the Brakes actually winning right now at 34%, good enough to go bowling at 29. Actually, serious breakout season is beating top 8 in the SEC. So, the expectations for Lenore Sellers are going to be pretty high. From the fact that he's the local kid that we've been hearing about for years, and what the little glimpses of what we've got to see of him certainly live up to that billing. I don't know if I'm ready to put him in Heisman dark horse candidacy yet. But if he went out there and balled out, I'm not going to sit here and say I'd be like, oh my God, super shocked by it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this kid has so much potential. It's ridiculous. We've seen what it can do. It's just so far, and I mean, we haven't even scratched the surface in terms of like what exactly we've seen and what he's done. So, I think in terms of talking season, right? It's fun to play the hypothetical, but is he gonna win the Heisman? Probably not. But again, it's oddly it's still within the realm of possibilities with this kid again, because we haven't really seen his highs and his lows and stuff like that. So he's shown it on tape, his ability to run, his ability to throw the football. So there's a lot to be excited about, and I mean, I wouldn't completely put it out of the question yet.
I would say getting in the top 8 in the SEC is a reasonable expectation. I mean, you'd be in the top half of the league. Of course, you got 16 teams now with with Texas and Oklahoma coming in. Now, that being said, there's a lot of high caliber quarterback play in the SEC for this year. You got Quinn Ewers coming back, who's going to be in a lot of people's Heisman ballots. Carson Beck returns for another season at Georgia. Jalen Milroe coming back at Alabama. Garrett Nussmeier, that people have forgotten about him. They wanted him to start over Jaden Daniels, prior to last season for some folks down there in Baton Rouge. So a lot of really, really good quarterbacks in the SEC that, hopefully will prove to be good competition and a good bar to measure yourself against if you are Lenore Sellers. He does end up to be at some point in his college career.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we'll see how again in the SEC it plays out. I think he has potential to be one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC, or at least become one of the guys that's getting talked about. Because of his flash, because of his likability, the rec specs, everything like that. The branding and everything works. He's a humble kid. He's hard not to like. So I think the potential's all there. It's just a matter of just keeping things on track. And there might be growing pains with Lenore's too. I mean, he's still a young quarterback. He still has to learn and mature. under the bright lights, and so that's gonna happen. But yeah, Tyler. I mean, I think he's probably not gonna go on to win the Heisman, but so temper the expectations maybe a little bit. But based on the poll and everything, I think this kid has a lot of potential to have a really good year.
Well, and I think that's that's an interesting way to look at it with the growing pains, because again, he's never started a game at the college level before. He's played a handful of snaps in garbage time, last season, so hasn't faced the best of the best competition. And if he goes out there and doesn't have his best game against Kentucky or something like that in week number 2, I don't think that's a reason to give up on him. It's just going to take some time to to truly get up to speed and take on this enormous role that not a lot of guys can step into at that young age. Now, I do think he's got a good head on his shoulders and certainly seems mature beyond his years, but we'll just have to wait and see. Unfortunately, we still have well over 100 days until kickoff, so until then, it's going to be all speculation and guessing.
Yeah, speculation, guessing, and hype. Right. Again, the hype train is real, and I think South Carolina fans have been waiting for a quarterback. I mean, obviously Spencer Rattler was great and stuff like that, but when he was here, it was like almost the win now mentality. And so you've been hearing about Lenore Sellers for a while, the big quarterback recruit, and so you're doing the hype game again, and it's going to be building all summer long leading into that first game. But yeah, I mean, it would be unrealistic to not expect some growing pains again. And I don't think it'll be like the world is on fire kind of growing pains, but there will be growing pains just as it comes. I mean, he's a new quarterback, he's fresh, he still has to mature a little bit, but and again, it's only just going to be a moment where it's just pump the brakes a little bit, realize, what's going on. Oh yeah, right. He's still growing and learning and maturing as a quarterback. But I mean, at first, when the expectations of hype and all of the hype that you'd been building off season, when that first, kind of washed away a little bit, it does feel little better and interesting like that. So yeah, no, I think it'll be interesting to see how Lenore does. Again, expectations. It's the hope that kills you, Tyler. It really does.
It does, and I look forward to talking about it all summer long. But I really look forward to actually seeing the results on the field coming up this fall, and hopefully, again, he does live up to the billing. Again, it's the Extra Point. Tyler Head with you, broadcasting live at the Darlington Raceway, sponsored by our friends over at Schroeder's Towing. Going to be out here until noon. Coming up next to wrap up hour number 2. Going to give you another chance to win some tickets to Sunday's Goodyear 400. So we'll have some NASCAR trivia coming back on the other side. He's intern Joe, joining me each and every Friday from Gamecock Central. I'm Tyler Head. It's the Extra Point here on the game. Cool. All right, one more segment.
Oh, sweet. How are you excited for Throwback Weekend?
Oh yeah, so excited. I
awesome.
Kind of had to. I went faster than I probably should have driving up here, but I run a little behind. But it should be a fun weekend. The rain's supposed to push out later on this afternoon, so it should be good for the weekend.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've been listening to coverage. I've been seeing TikToks how Throwback Weekend's back. Checked out all the paint schemes, all that.
I've been trying to find a picture of myself from Halloween years and years ago, where I dressed up as Terry Labonte to use, but I haven't been able to find it yet.
That's awesome.
It's in here somewhere.
Boogity, boogity, boogity.
Let's see. Yeah, Paul Skeen's getting to start tomorrow for the Pirates.
I know. I'm excited for him. I told my dad and my little brother to drive down to Indianapolis and watch him play before he gets called up, but they never did.
What a life that guy must have, huh?
Yeah, I know.
Tearing through the minors, Livy Dunn. He's got it all.
Yeah, I know. He's like, they say he's like crazy. Well, not like good crazy, like Debo Williams, like crazy, like locking in crazy kind of stuff like that. Like, I want his McAfee. I usually don't. I haven't been listening to McAfee as much because again, they're some talking dogs. But he was like, yeah, I warm up to audiobooks. I'm like, that's crazy, bro.
Well, to be as good as that guy is, you gotta be locked in.
I know. Yeah. And I think like Air Force is where he got all his discipline from, and then you take it to a place like LSU.
That's
Imagine if
true.
Michael Braswell had Air Force discipline. I think he's
What's been
still.
funny? What's been funny to me is the people that have been dogging Michael Braswell about what he said about wanting to go play for a winning team, and
Yeah.
up until a couple weeks ago, looked like they weren't even going to make Hoover.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
Careful what you say.
I know.
And welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Friday on the Game Intern. Joe joining me as he does each and every Friday from Gamecock Central. Of course, I am out at the Darlington Raceway, sponsored by our friends over at Schroeder's Towing, and it's time for another opportunity for you to win tickets to Sunday's Goodyear 400. Hit sound.
Time to give away some tickets to the Goodyear 400 at Darlington.
Rick Hendrick wins 296. William Byron wins the Goodyear 400.
Here is some NASCAR trivia on the game. First person to get the question right wins.
Like you said, first person to get the question right, 803-404-6100 wins. This hour's trivia question is name all three drivers that have the most Cup Series championships. They're all tied with the same number. What three are those? Looking for three names. Caller with the right answer right now, 803-404-6100. Which three Cup drivers share the most Cup Series titles? So Ed Bird answering the phones on that. Hopefully we'll get a winner here in just a moment. Joe, I always tell anybody that at least once in your life you need to go to a race. It's like unlike any other experience you can ever have at any sporting event, baseball game, football game, whatever it may be. Have you ever made your way out to a racetrack before?
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. I've had the privilege of going to see the boys race up there in Michigan.
Okay.
Up there. And I have seen the 500 big from Indiana. Yes, the not quite the same sport, but
Right.
yeah,
So
but
it's right
the
passage in Indiana.
yeah, oh, absolutely. And the race in Michigan was all that and more. It was awesome. One of the coolest starting of sporting events I'll ever see.
Oh, the pageantry is unmatched. There's nothing more patriotic than the pre-race at any kind of NASCAR event. I can tell you that
Yeah.
much.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was awesome. And again, like it was my first NASCAR race. It was my family's like whole first NASCAR race because we didn't my dad didn't grow up in the South, and NASCAR wasn't necessarily as big of a thing for my family. So, seeing that was awesome, and I've been back to a couple, but nothing really is quite like your first race.
What year was that first one?
Oh gosh, I can't. I think Denny Hamlin won it. But it was probably 2012, 2013, something like that.
Okay.
But
Yeah, that'd
yeah,
be if Denny Hamlin won, that would have been 2012.
yeah. Oh yeah. And yeah, I mean it was a pretty good race. And again, we did find it was a little harder to follow the race from out on the track and stuff like that, but
Sure.
still absolutely electric start, like I in the finish and everything, and we had the radios too,
Yeah,
listening and some of the drivers. And Ryan Newman grew up in my hometown of South
that's
Bend, so
right.
I grew up with some of his family, stuff like that, and that was cool. We were all there when he won Daytona back in South Bend, so that was also quite
Oh
fun.
yeah, that was very cool. I'm jealous that you've been to the Indy 500. That's the next item to check off my list. I went to Daytona for the first time this year, but I gotta make my way up to Indy. I don't know if I look forward to the 10-hour drive to get up there, but it'd be well worth it.
10.5 $. I make that drive every time I go home, see the family. So it's not too bad. I mean, Midwesterners, we know how to drive super long distances, but no, the Indy 500's all the time. It certainly is a spectacle. That is for sure.
Ed Bird, do we have a winner for our trivia question this hour? Okay, shout out to our guy Eddie for correctly guessing all three of the champions that have the most titles in NASCAR history. That being Richard Petty, Dale Earnhardt, and Jimmy Johnson, all tied with 7 titles apiece. Something that I don't know if it's ever going to be replicated again, because getting to 7 is certainly very, very difficult. Well, I'll say this, Joe. If you ever want to go to a race again, you got to come out here to Darlington. This is a really fun place. This is the third time I've been out here. Really cool. Staff's here great. Obviously, it's a great venue itself, and tons of great racing. And certainly looking forward to being out here all weekend long.
Yeah, I'd love to come see Darlington, the Lady in Black, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I would love to get up there, see that track. So many storied races and lore behind that track. So yeah, absolutely, anytime, Tyler.
The funny thing about it, it kind of sits in the middle of nowhere, to where
Hmm.
if you had no clue it was out here, because like there's neighborhoods surrounding this place. Like you're driving up, going past people's mailboxes, then you look, oh hey, there's a racetrack right there. Like it's very old school. I mean, they were running here since the early 50s. It's very old school, where they just find a big open field, and this was built on like swampland, so they probably got the land pretty cheap, but they found just a big open place to build a racetrack, and that's what they did. And that's where a lot of racetracks popped up that way, and I don't know, just kind of it matches the throwback vibe of the weekend. True old school, pretty nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's crazy because Michigan is so similar. Michigan's right in the middle of a cornfield, just pull up on a hill and just poof, massive racetrack, super speedway, stuff like that. And again, that goes to the history of NASCAR. I mean, like you said, Tyler, you guys have been running, about 50 years. I mean, it's crazy. So there's a lot of storied history, and I'm sure it'll be a great weekend up there.
Absolutely. And again, I'll be out here all morning long. Got another chance for you to win some tickets coming up at the end of the 11 o'clock hour as well. Appreciate it as always, Joe. I know we've kind of missed each other the past few weeks. We should both be back in studio next week.
Yeah, fingers crossed, Tyler. I'm hoping this baseball team has some remorse on my evenings, and maybe you can get to bed on time and stuff like that. But yes, hopefully we will be back in the studio soon. I promise we'll make it
All right.
happen.
Appreciate it as always. Gamecock Central Takeover hour presented by Firehouse Subs next here on the game. All right.
Perfect. All right.